In the last couple lessons, we've worked directly on the master branch of the sample application directory, but it's a good idea to make a separate topic branch when we make a large number of changes. So let's do that now. Let's do git checkout -b for a new branch, and then filling in layout. And I also want to make some standard tabs for my setup. I'd like to put a server in this tab. Just Rails S is fine. And then I start a Spork server. And then it's always a good idea just to make sure we're green. Let's run auto test once Spork is ready to work. There it is. Just make sure we're green. And there we go. Excellent. Now we're going to be working primarily on our application layout. So let's take a look at that just to remind ourselves where we are. It's in app, views, layouts, application.html.erb. And so what we're going to be doing is adding a bunch of stuff to this layout, and we'll be modifying the home pages as well, just a little bit. So let's take a look at where we are there. We're on localhost 3000. And remember, this page, this is the default Rails page. We will be getting rid of this page in this lesson. And we'll be changing it to what is currently at /pages/home. Now, it's a good idea at this stage to get some sense of where we're going. So this is one of the things you do early in the life of a web application, which is to do a mock-up of where you're going. So here's a mock-up of what the home page might eventually look like. You can see that I've got a stub here for an image, which will probably be a logo. In fact, I'm sure it will be a logo. Then there will be some navigation links here at the top. And then you can see that there's the body, and on the home page, we're going to have a big Sign Up Now button, and then a footer with some links at the bottom. This was made with a web application for making mockups called Mockingbird at gomockingbird.com. So now we're going to add the site navigation. And there's actually some other stuff we want to do first. Remember, we're treating this as a real web application. And so these little details that you can usually punt on, we're going to deal with. And the first detail we need to deal ourselves with is concerned with this HTML5 doc type. Not all web browsers support HTML5 right now. It's fairly new as a standard. And if you've done any sort of web development or web design, you know that by not all browsers, I mean Internet Explorer. And so what we're going to do is use this thing called an HTML5 shiv. I don't know what the name signifies, but it's a little piece of JavaScript code that will bring Internet Explorer up to speed with HTML5. So let's stick that in here. This is some weird syntax. I find this really weird, at least. If less than, i.e. 9, then we're going to include this script that I'm going to paste in. You can find this on the Ruby on Rails tutorial website. This is going to insert a script. This is a JavaScript that's the HTML5 shiv at googlecode.com. And then I'm going to have the closing tag here. And if. Now, at this point, I'd just like to draw your attention to this strange syntax, which it's important to emphasize is not related to Ruby or Rails or anything like that. It's not embedded Ruby. This is just a plain HTML syntax, but I find it really strange, and you may not have seen it before, even if you've done quite a bit of HTML. So there's another thing we need to do with the same syntax, which is concern ourselves with a whole bunch of weirdnesses in versions of Internet Explorer less than 8. So let's put that in here. If less than, i.e. 8, now we're going to put in a style sheet link tag. This is embedded Ruby, so I'm going to do in TextMate st escape to put that in there, and then it's a blueprint /ie.css file, or we can leave off the .css, and it actually doesn't need the media type. Just see where this is: public style sheets blueprint. Here it is. It doesn't matter what's in it, but it's really nice that Blueprint comes with this. So here we go. And now we're going to put in one more style sheet in anticipation of making some custom CSS rules. So this is also embedded Ruby. Style sheet link tag, and let's call it custom. This will be custom.css, and this does have a media, which which is screen for regular computer screens. And that completes the head part of the document. Now let's look at the body. The Blueprint CSS framework expects the entire body to be inside a division or div with class equal to container. This is a CSS class that's completely unrelated to Ruby classes. Inside the container div, I'm going to put in a header tag. This tag is new in HTML5 if it's unfamiliar. And we're going to put in a logo image, and I'm going to use a Rails HTML helper for this. So here's some embedded Ruby, and image tag. We'll insert an image. Before, we've left off the parentheses for this. This is just a function call. But in this case, I'm going to put the parentheses in, and we'll see later on why that is. So here's image tag logo.ping. Of course, we don't have a logo.ping yet, but we will momentarily. Here's the alternate text, the alt text, which I'm going to say is sample app. This is what will get rendered by a browser that can't render images. And we're going to have a lot of elements that are nice rounded elements with rounded corners, which will work in every browser except Internet Explorer. So that's going to be implemented by a CSS class called round. So let's take a look at the result of this. Let's reload the page. And now you see in the upper left, well, first of all, there's some nice margin space here as a result of the container div. Here it says sample app. That is the alt text. Now, that's browser dependent. If you're not using Firefox, you may not see that. But let's take a look at the HTML source. Now, this is a really good way to learn about these HTML helpers in Rails. I'm going to close the gutter here. So you've got an image tag helper here, and here is the corresponding HTML code. So you can learn a lot about the helpers just by looking at the correspondence between these two things. Okay, now also inside the header, I want to put in some navigation links, and these will go inside a tag called nav. This is also HTML5. And I'm going to give that a class. It's also going to be round. And then I'm going to put it in an unordered list. Let's put that in, of tags. This is the UL tag. And each list element is an LI. And each element of the list will be a link. And so I'm going to use another Rails helper called link2. And the first argument is the text of the link. In this case, I'm going to call it home. And the second argument is the URL. In this case, I'm just going to use the # as a way of stubbing out the URL. I don't know what it's going to be yet. Actually, we could put in /pages/home here and it would work, but that's not what we want it to be. We're going to be using a technique called named routes to solve that problem later in this lesson. So let's look at a couple more links. Let's copy and paste here. Let's have a home link, have a help link, and also make a sign in link. And this is a very optimistic link. Someday, maybe we'll have a way to sign into this site. But for now, it'll just be a placeholder. And that finishes our header. And now the main part of the page goes inside a section tag. Let's do that. Section. This is also HTML5. And will also be round. And that's where the yield goes. So let's do that. And now let's take a look at the document. And there we go. We've got these links and not very much else. So this isn't exciting yet, but we've got the infrastructure now with all of these tags and CSS classes. We're in a good position to style this page with cascading style sheets. So at this point, let's make a commit. See what we've got here. So there's just the changes to the layout. Say git commit -an. Completed the layout structure. And now we want to get a logo image in place of this alt text. Let's get a logo. So you can go to the Ruby on Rails tutorial book to see this URL. Here it is. It's at railstutorial.org/images/sampleapp/logo.ping, and you can take a look at it. And what I like to do is drag this to my desktop and then move it to the right directory. So let's move it. MV tilde desktop /logo.ping, and this goes in public. And I'm going to double tab here to see what's in there. You can see what's in there. You can probably guess that it goes in public images. And let's see if it works. Aha, there we go. So our logo is now working. It doesn't look good yet, but that's a big step. So let's commit that. You can just add the public directory. Could have done git add dot as well. Git commit -m added a logo image. And now it's time to add some custom CSS rules. This is not a course in web design. The Ruby on Rails tutorial is about web development, but it's really depressing to work on a website that looks like complete crap. So we're going to add just enough rules to make it look decent. Let's take a look at the style sheets directory. Now you can probably guess from this, style sheet link tag custom, that it's going to go in the style sheets directory. So let's add a file called custom.css. I'm going to be pretty quick with these rules. I'm just going to put them in and then show you the result of them. And you can read about this at more length in the Ruby on Rails tutorial book. Let's get started with the custom CSS rules by taking another look at our HTML structure. Here we go. This is the page source. We're going to be working with the structure inside the body tag. We're going to start with this div with class container, and then we'll be changing the rules for things like the links and some of the text rules, and then we'll get the navigation in order. So it's always a good idea to refer to the HTML when you're doing CSS if you get confused. So the way we reference a container class is with .container, and then we're going to give it a width, a standard width of 710 pixels. And we're also going to give the entire body a background color. And it's going to be CFF. Let's take a look at what that did. Okay, well, let's start. Let's hide the gutter here. So next, let's make the header a little bit nicer. We'll give it a padding on the top, 20 pixels. And let's give the header image some padding, 1M, which is the width of the letter M, and then a background of white. Take a look at that. It's nice. These corners look fairly sharp, but apart from that, it's pretty good. And then the main part of the text is inside a section tag. And we're going to say that has a top margin of 1M. Make this font size a little bigger, 120%. Padding of 20 pixels. Background of FFF. This is white. Again, this is a hex value, red, green, blue, so if they're all maximum, then that's white. There we go. And now I'm going to style the links a little bit. So let's do links. This is a comment in CSS. And we're going to make the default color 09C. There are lots of things on the web that will help you come up with HTML colors, so I just use one of those. And by default, I don't want them to be underlined, so I'm going to say text decoration none. But if you hover over a link, I want the text decoration to change to make it underline. And just keep it in the same order. The color will also change. I'm going to make it 069. And then if you visit a link, I want the color to change. It's going to change to the same as the hover text, 069. All right, let's take a look at that. All right, so you saw the colors change here. If you mouse over, you get a color change and an underline, and then down here, there's no color change here because I've already visited this link. Now, it's nice to change the color like that, but we still have this really horrible vertical orientation of these navigation links, so let's fix that. So this is the navigation section. And remember, this is inside a nav tag, so we can look at, let's float it to the right. Give it a background color. Make it white. This is the same as FFF. I just want to show you there are actually some aliases for the hex value. Give it some padding. This is the top padding. This is the side padding. And then this is going to keep it from breaking across white space. So we'll keep it all in one line. Take a look at this. See, so now it's floated over to the right. It's still vertically oriented, but looks a lot better. And now let's change those links. So nav ul, this is the unordered list. I'm going to say no margin, no padding. And then nav ul li, this is the list element, list style type, none. This gets rid of those black dots, and then display inline block, and give it some padding. And there we go. It's looking a lot better. They're still bunched up though, aren't they? So let's fix that. Nav ul li a. This is now the anchor tags inside the list element. So let's say padding 0.5 pixels, and let's make them bold. Looking better. And now let's say nav ul li a visited. It's nice for navigation links not to change color, so let's just make that the same color as they always are, 09C. Forgot this. Here we go. And let's underline them if you hover over them. So nav ul li a hover. Text decoration. Take a look at this. And looks good. Now you may recall that on the mockup we had a sign up link, so let's put that in on our home page. Remember, it's in app, views, pages, home.html.erb, and we're going to use embedded Ruby with the link to tag again. Link to, this is going to be our sign up page, so sign up now, and then the URL will just be the stub. And let's give it a couple of CSS classes. So you can do class sign up underscore button. And if you put a space between CSS classes, then it will just apply them both. So let's make the button round as well. Let's take a look here. Oh, there's our link, but it's not very impressive yet. We would like to make it prominent so that people will sign up. Since we gave it these two rules, we can have a sign up button section. Let's do that. I'm just going to paste this in because there's quite a lot. So you can go to the Ruby on Rails tutorial book and read about this. So margin left, margin right auto, display block, text align center. There's a standard width, given it a white background, a white color, and then a color background. We've made the font 150%. It's bold, and there's some padding. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so this is our complete home page at this point. Of course, we don't have the links going anywhere, but this is looking pretty good. The one thing I really want to change is these sharp corners. So let's do that. Let's do round corners. So remember it's a round class, so dot round, and then this is the magical incantation. I'm just going to copy and paste this because there's a bunch of stuff. These are all the same thing. Moz border radius, this works in Mozilla Firefox style browsers. WebKit works with Safari and so on, and then this works in Opera. You can notice Internet Explorer is not on the list. So that's the way it is in life. But it looks pretty good, so let's check it out. Everything's so this is round up here, this is round up here, the body is round, and the button is round. Now before moving on, let's make a commit. Let's go over here. Git status. So we added the custom style sheet, so let's do git add dot, git commit, added a custom style sheet. Let's take a look at where we are. We've got our application.html.erb file here. Now we're pretty much done with this, but you might notice that there's a lot of stuff up here in the top part of the head, and it's getting cluttered. So I want to introduce at this point a really useful technique called Rails partials. So I'm going to put all of this stuff in the same place. I'm going to just cut this, and I'm going to make a partial for style sheet. So let's take a look at how this works. So inside the layouts directory, I'm going to make a special file called _ style sheets .html.erb. We don't want the CSS part there. _ style sheets.html.erb. Let's create this. Now I'm just going to paste in what I just cut. These aren't all technically style sheets. We actually have some JavaScript in here, but it's for styling purposes. So conceptually, it's part of the styling of the site. Now we've got all of this code in its own separate file. And now what we want to do is insert that content where it used to be. And the way we do that is with the render method. So let's look at render. This is one of the most useful Rails functions. It lets us render the style sheets partial. So I'm going to write, we want to put the directory in here because we'll be using this on all the different pages of the site. So we actually need to tell it that it's in layouts / style sheets. Now notice that the name of the file has an underscore at the front, so leading underscore. That is what makes it a partial. That's what indicates to Rails that it's a partial. But when you render it, you don't put the underscore in. Let's see how that works. And it works just the same. Now you could write tests for this, but I don't usually write tests for things like CSS file inclusion. But in the future, we will have tests for catching things that might be broken by partials. Now that we know about partials, you might see other things that logically belong in their own little files. And so, for example, there's this whole header section that we can put in a partial. Let's render it. It will also be in layouts / what should we call this? Let's call it _ header. Oh, except remember, we don't want the underscore here. And then we need to create a new file. _ header.html.erb. And I like to just move it over. There we go. Let's take a look at this. All right, so it still works. And now that we know how to make partials, we can add another partial. Let's add a footer partial. Let's put it down here after the section, but still inside the container. So we need to make a new file called footer _ footer.html.erb. And let's give it a footer tag. This is also navigation, so we're going to give it a nav tag. It's also going to be round. And now this will be an unordered list as before with the upper navigation. Oops. And let's link to the about page in the footer. And again, we're just going to stub it out. let's link to the contact page. And then I'm going to put in a couple actual links. So let's link to the news page for the Ruby on Rails tutorial project and to the Rails tutorial website itself. Now you can actually make these links either with link to or with static anchor tags. Let's use link to in this case. Let's say this is going to be news, and then we can actually put in the URL here, http://news.railstutorial.org, and then here we'll have Rails tutorial, and it's going to be http://railstutorial.org. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so we've got our footer down here, but it's all the way over to the right. That indicates that we need another CSS rule just for footers. So I'm just going to paste this in. Custom.css. There's the footer, and it's going to be centered. We're going to give it a margin on the top, a particular width, and then the margin left and margin right auto are needed to make it center in some browsers. And then we want to say float none. We don't want it to float to the right. It's just going to be in the center. So let's take a look. And there we go. That's a nice little footer with links. Okay, let's take one more look at our code. This is much cleaner than it was before. Now we're just rendering a style sheets partial, a header partial, and a footer partial. So you can see at a glance what the structure of the document is. So let's commit these changes. Just add everything, git commit, the message, I've added some partials, putting a footer. There we go.